Sometimes the reason you cannot let someone go is not necessarily because you don't see the truth. On the contrary, you see it very, very well. It's so clear to you, but it's because you understand them too well. You understand that person way too good. You can see the patterns, you can deconstruct the person and see all the pieces of the puzzle that make that person unique. You can see the attachment wounds, their fears, the insecurities, their self doubts, even the capacity, and you feel a lot of empathy for them. But then at some point, that empathy turns into self abandonment. And I don't know if you have experienced this, probably you have. If you're here, it's because this is not your first rodeo. And I do think a lot of us do this, especially if you are a highly self aware person. If you're very good at pattern recognition, you understand many times you could understand a person better than they understand themselves because you can read the label from outside of the jar. And many of us, at a personal level, it's hard for us to read the label of our own jar because we tend to be inside of it. But someone with perspective, someone with self awareness, somebody like you, someone that, once again, is very good at pattern recognition, can see the label, can understand the person, and that actually brings you something. It brings you the clarity and understanding that, okay, we tend to tell ourselves they're going through something hard. They're scared, they didn't mean it, they have these attachment wounds. Maybe they have a disorganized attachment style. Maybe they are anxious, maybe they're avoidant. And we know that they don't mean it, that the behavior is not mean intended. They're not trying to hurt us, they're not trying to make us feel that we don't matter. They're just doing the best they can with the capacity and with the level of self awareness that they have. But that doesn't mean that you have to keep absorbing the consequences of the behaviors. And this happens, by the way, this happens in family dynamics, it happens in friendships, it happens in romantic relationships. We deeply care about the other person. And I think that maybe letting go is not necessarily stop caring. It's hard, especially because you know that they never intended to hurt you. Never. Maybe letting go is learning how to stop abandoning yourself because you care. And this is probably one of the hardest part. This is what I call the empathy trap, for lack of better words, because I cannot find a better term for it. A lot of these explanations that you see in another person, somebody's distant, somebody's cold, somebody says something, did something that hurt you. And you come up with theories and explanations to truly understand why that happened, to figure out whether that was personal or not. The problem becomes is when that understanding of why somebody behaves in a certain way becomes a reason to stop acknowledging how the behavior affects you. And probably this is one of the hardest things I've learned in my life. And one of the hardest lessons, one of the most painful lessons, and one of the ones that took me the longest to truly understand and comprehend and start changing in me. Because understanding someone does not obligate you to keep absorbing the consequences of the behaviors. And this one becomes increasingly hard when you have high levels of self-awareness, you have a high level of emotional intelligence, you are very good at regulating yourself emotionally, and you want to protect the other person. You want to protect the other person because if you speak up, then if that person doesn't have the capacity to understand, and to hear you and to really comprehend what you're trying to say, what you're trying to communicate, that person could go into a dark place. And because you can take the pain or you can take the emotional shock better than the other person, or at least that's what we tell ourselves, we tend to say, maybe this has happened to you. You know what? I'll take this one. I'll absorb this one. It hurts. That's okay. I'm going to let this one go. And then another one. I'm going to let this one go. I'm going to let this one go. And eventually it comes to a point where you realize, holy crap, I keep abandoning myself because you start suppressing reasonable needs. And this is the really dangerous part when it comes to being deeply aligned with ourselves. Because the more we abandon ourselves, the more we start thinking that asking for a need, even a reasonable, simple need, is too much. In fact, we shouldn't. I mean, you know what? I shouldn't go for that. No, I shouldn't go for that. No. What am I even thinking? No, I cannot ask that person because now I'm asking for too much. And I think we don't speak up because we are so afraid of losing the connection. And this is where empathy really hurts us because there are moments in which you enjoy the connection because you wouldn't be in this situation if you didn't enjoy the connection. The connection many times is real, is wonderful. There are individual moments when you feel alive, when you feel like, wow, man, I just freaking enjoy myself when I'm interacting with this person. Once again, it doesn't have to be romantic, but it applies a lot of why dating nowadays is a mess. And then you have other moments where you feel lack of nourishment. You're not being nourished by the relationship, by the connection. But because you have a good moments, you appreciate them, you're so afraid of losing that. And you think, you know what? Let me be patient. Let me be compassionate. Let me be emotionally intelligent. But I think underneath, there's a fear that if I ask for what I need, will they leave? It's almost like a coin flip. Either it feels to me that if I protect the connection, I will abandon myself. And if I protect myself, I will abandon the connection. Or, in other words, if I protect the connection, I'll lose myself. If I protect myself, I'll lose the connection. And this is a terrifying thing because if you think about it, it would be a lose lose situation, or at least it feels to us a lose lose situation. And I've learned the hard way, maybe you have as well, that if maintaining the connection requires me to continually silence myself, I'm not protecting the relationship anymore. I'm abandoning myself to preserve it. And that's a hard realization because now you understand that if it wasn't for you, the relationship would have died a long time ago. Or at least that's what our brain tells us. And and the reason why I felt inspired or just I felt this pull to talk about this particular topic today is because I recently had one of the biggest moments in my career. And someone who I consider very close to me, special, and has been part of this journey, did something or an interaction happened that really hurt me. Because after this moment was over, this incredible moment in my career, with which was a, a keynote I gave a couple of weeks ago in a different city, close to 300 people for an hour. It was a milestone in my career because I've given keynotes in the past, I've given workshops, but this one was special. I remember that After that happened, I felt distant from this person and it hurt. And because I know this person so well, I knew it wasn't jealousy. I knew that the person felt like, okay, Daniel is accomplished great things. Daniel's accomplishing great things, and I'm here being lame. No, no. This person is a badass, successful person as well. And I knew it wasn't that. I could see the patterns of why that was happening. And obviously my first instinct, besides being hurt, it was to explain it away. It's like, maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe it's difficult for them. Maybe this, maybe that. And eventually, after a few days of just feeling the pain and feeling the hurt, and at some point getting resentful, I realized that I was using empathy to protect myself. I was using empathy to talk myself out of acknowledging what I needed. Because explaining things away to reduce the amount of pain is something I can control. But speaking up and waiting for the response is something that I cannot. It's completely outside of my control. So I would rather shrink myself, abandoning myself, than risking losing something that I treasure. And I know that for some of you, it would be like a no brainer. Hey, if this is happening, why don't you get the hell out of that relationship? Or why do you just break that friendship? Or why do you just put boundaries with your family or whoever? Because clearly it's not serving you. And this is what I want to make a distinction or make a point, because I think that many of us have experienced this. Something that is real does not mean that it's sustainable. What do I mean by that? A connection can be beautiful. The conversation can be real, the bonding can be real, the history and the comfort and the affection can be real. All of that can be real in your experience. You felt the bonding, you felt the connection. But something can be that real without being sustainable. Now, I'm not trying to say cut every relationship that that makes you feel this way, because we have never given an opportunity to the other person to step forward, to 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 share some of the emotional load. Humans were messy. Relationships, any kind of relationship, even a roommate relationship, is messy. We are not easy in general. If you think that you're an easy person, easy to live with, you're not. I'm not. No one is. It would be easy if we're living with someone exactly like us. Maybe. So the fact that it's not sustainable now does not mean they cannot be sustainable in the future. Because in this particular moment, like right now, maybe you're experiencing this with someone that you know. A relationship can feel wonderful in individual moments. Those moments when time stops, where you just feel alive and you connect at a deeper level and you just present. And yet, it can still fail to meet your needs as an ongoing relationship. So realizing that perhaps you have to start letting go of someone, letting go that friendship, letting go that family member, letting go a situationship or somebody that you've been dating is already hard enough. But then it comes the next step that I would say that is probably the hardest, and that is grieving. Because you're not just grieving the person, you're grieving the relationship, you're grieving the moments you have with the person, you're grieving the future you imagine with that person in your life, even if it's just friendship. You're grieving the version of you that you were with that person. And that's why logic is not enough. We can understand logically and rationally why a connection no longer serves us as it stands right now. But even though you know that, you you still don't want to release it. And it sounds kind of paradoxically, why would I want to release something that doesn't serve me? Well, because letting go requires giving up possibility, especially depending on how much effort or time and energy you have invested over time in this relationship. Imagine you've known somebody for a year or 15 years, and you know that maybe I'm in this close from turning things around. Maybe I'm this close from now this person acting and behaving and doing the things that I need to feel that this connection is reciprocal, to feel nourished inside of it. And when you decide to let go, you're grieving that possibility that never happened. And I think at the end of the day, and people say this a lot, and I want to be very, very clear, in the process of acknowledging that something doesn't serve you, in the process of letting go, in the process of grieving, we have to release the grip. And and it's so hard for us as humans because we want to control everything. We want to have a sense of control. And letting go doesn't necessarily mean that you will stop loving someone. Because the moment that you try to do so, it's gonna be hard. Because why you resist, persist. If you're trying to resist your love for that person, it will become stronger. It doesn't require erasing memories. It doesn't require, anger. It doesn't even require knowing exactly why things happen. I think letting go or just releasing that grip, honestly, is stop requiring the situation to become different before I allow myself to move forward. Or simply, and this it comes when it comes to manifestation that applies as a universal rule, is I release my grip on the outcome I wanted. I wanted this connection to be more special. I wanted this person to be a close friend of mine. I wanted to really bond with his family member. I really wanted to build something romantically with this person. That was the outcome that we wanted, but that's not the outcome that we got. And we cannot control reality. Reality is undefeated to us. Reality is just is. It's just accepting what is. And and this applies releasing the grip. It applies to opportunities, applies for relationships, it applies for friendship, it applies for business, it applies for everything. One of the solutions, because I'm not trying to say if you feel that your needs are not met, let go, block them out of your life, move on. You can do that if you have voice, if you have spoken up, and if you have shared and communicated what you needed, and yet the person never changed behaviors. And this is where boundaries come into play. But I want to be very clear about something. Boundaries are being thrown out all the time on social media. Boundaries this, boundaries that. Let's just really define what boundaries are. Like a boundary is not it's not saying I'm going to punish you because you didn't give me what I wanted. Because boundaries are just information, no punishment. If the other person takes it as a punishment, so be it. But when it comes from you, it doesn't have to come as punishment. You're not punishing that person for not giving you what you wanted. You're just communicating, hey, this is what I need in order to participate in this relationship in a healthy way. And I know this sounds terrifying. I know, trust me. There are moments in which I'm terrified of speaking up in order to stop abandoning myself because it might feel like you're going to lose someone you deeply care about. But one thing I come to realize is a boundary does not destroy a healthy connection. It reveals what the connection has the capacity to hold. A boundary does not destroy a healthy connection. It only reveals what the connection has the capacity to hold. The process is not easy. But if it's one thing that I would like you to take away from this and how to really be able to set up your boundaries, move on, letting people go, is having self trust. Self trust is what actually makes letting go possible. Without self trust, it's so hard because self trust require it means that you're releasing certainty. You release your desire to control because you don't know whether they will come back. You don't know whether you will find another connection like this. Your brain treats connection as scarcity. If one connection was amazing, your to your brain will never find that again. We need to preserve it at all costs, even if that costs ourselves. You don't know whether you made the right decision, and you don't know whether things have changed if you have waited longer, because there's always that point. And I don't know if you have seen that meme of the miner who's trying to find diamonds, and he's excavating. And once it's so close, it's just a very thin layer of dirt. He turns around and leaves. That's what anything, whether we build a business, we are in a new career, or we are in a current career, and we have these connections, we feel, what if I wait a little bit longer? What if I just wait a tiny bit longer? And honestly, that's where we are trapped because we give them an extra day, an extra week, an extra month. Maybe they will change. And you can spend years feeling empty, feeling that you haven't been nourished the way that you want, feeling that the relationship hasn't been fully reciprocal because of that fear that, well, maybe if I wait a tiny bit longer, this person will change. In a nutshell, self trust says, I don't need to know what happens next to know that I cannot keep abandoning myself here. I don't need to know what happens next to know that I cannot keep abandoning myself here. And I wish I could tell you that letting go is just one decision, right? That you finally understand the lesson, you choose yourself, and you're done. Like done. I have nothing else. I'm learning that it isn't. Sometimes letting go is choosing yourself repeatedly, day after day. You won't get it perfectly on day one, you won't get it perfectly on day 20. But choosing yourself repeatedly can be incredibly painful because choosing yourself can feel like choosing against someone you still care about. It can feel like if you protect yourself, you lose the connection. And if you protect the connection, you lose yourself. I'm still learning that things are not black and white. I'm still learning that those are not the only two options that we have in life. Because, as I said at the beginning, choosing yourself doesn't mean that you stop caring. It doesn't mean that what we had wasn't real. It doesn't mean that I suddenly don't want the person anymore. On the contrary, we really want the person. We really want to keep the connection. That's why we keep abandoning ourselves. It just means that you can no longer keep a connection alive by abandoning yourself inside of it. And maybe that's what letting go really is. It's not forcing yourself to stop loving someone. Once again, the more you try to force yourself, the harder it's going to be. It's not pretending that you don't care. Of course we do. Are you kidding? I mean, we're humans. We deeply care about others. But I think letting go is final is accepting that you can love something, grieve something, miss something, and still choose not to lose yourself trying to keep it. This could have been a very heavy episode, and I know I'm not the only one struggling with this particular moment. I know that a lot of us are going through something like this. But I hope this gives you some insights and it encourages you to reevaluate your connections, to give you the courage to speak up, to really communicate your needs. And your needs are not too much. Your needs are your needs. And if the person wants to follow it through, great. If not, you you have your answer. But please give the other person at least an opportunity to disappoint you. They might surprise you, they might disappoint you. But if you never give them the opportunity, you'll never know. That's all for today. Thanks for watching or listening, and I'll see you next episode.